Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Observer and Rapport Show for episode 13. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith. Keith, how are we doing today?
Very well, very well. Couldn't be better. Let's get right into it.
What's that?
You're reading Chaos.
I am reading Chaos.
I just haven't yet, but I hear it's the best fucking book.
It's a really
I'm actually genuinely excited to talk to you about this book.
It's a wild story. So I literally just finished it this morning. Chaos is about the Charles Manson murder trial.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I'm weirdly a huge fan of his, like in a weird way. Like,
well, he's like a cult.
He's a cultural icon. He's like a Marilyn Monroe. I mean,
yeah.
Well, go ahead.
So, if you're not familiar, it's a famous case from 1969. Charles Manson was basically this hippie in California. If you've seen the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino movie with like Leo and Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie.
Not his best, but I liked it. It was not his best movie.
It's based on that exact, literally like the entire plot is like based on that exact story. Obviously the ending of that is different. But basically what happened in 1969, Charles Manson kind of was the cult leader of what they called the family. And the family was basically, kind of these hippies, like a bunch of kind of derelict young women and kind of like burnout men who were in and out of prison their whole life, did drugs together, had orgies together.
Ne'er-do-wells, as they call
did like
them.
petty crimes, stole cars and stuff. And they lived at this ranch in Southern California. On one night in August of 1969, they go to this house, I forget, in Santa Monica or something, or Beverly Hills, and murder Sharon Tate, who was a famous actress, played by Margot Robbie in the movie, and about 4 or 5 other people, like brutally slaughtered them in their house, wrote pig in blood on the door. About 3 nights later...
Stabbings, correct?
Stabbings. 3 nights later, a similar murder happens against one victim. So basically, the book is about this guy, Tom O'Neill. And in 1999, this magazine, Premier Magazine, hired him to write an article just covering the 30th anniversary.
Okay.
Just write, here's 3 months, do some reporting, interview some of the prosecutors, the people who were involved in the case. Just write it for the magazine and it'll be a done deal. Tom O'Neill, this journalist, slowly, or actually very quickly, starts uncovering just like very odd things where he's like, this isn't adding up, like he's hearing things about the prosecutor being a little dirty. He's uncovering things where it's like the police didn't find out who did the murder for 4 months.
So he's starting to notice parallels
he's
between
starting to
law
notice
enforcement
just holes. Like,
right, holes.
Like, why did it take 30 years? And I'm just investigating this as like a journalist piece for a magazine. Why am I so quickly discovering holes in the prosecution, in the trial, in the characters that were involved? Like, things just aren't adding up. So the book is basically just covering, the guy went down a rabbit hole. So that 3-month article became 20 years of research.
No shit.
After he kept getting extensions from the magazine. After 6 years, he was just like, I'm cutting loose. Like, this has got to be a book. And then after 15 years, Penguin Publishing gives him the rights. They give him an advance of $500,000 to keep reporting. They drop him. He keeps going. And finally, he published this book only a few years ago. And unfortunately, the book never actually tells you what happened. And what he says in the beginning of the book is I'm not trying to, this book isn't meant to figure out what happened. It's meant to show what didn't happen that night.
Mm-hmm.
So
what are some common, misconceptions about the story then? Or what did he uncover that he's like, no, it actually went down like this?
Yeah, so there's a lot. Some of it you could claim is maybe a little bit conspiracy-ish, but it's all presented in the book where you're these kind of you kind of figure out the puzzle yourself. You can't put it together, but you have a lot more pieces. And the big things were, one, how did Charles Manson, this little hippie guy who was in prison his whole life, all of a sudden when he was 35, just have immense charisma and power over this entire cult of people on a farm, that he was basically able to incite them to perform these murders, because Charles Manson didn't do the murders himself. Most people don't realize that. He had his followers in the family to conduct the murders for him, is what the trial basically is. The other was, how did he seemingly have an endless supply of LSD, and where was he getting it?
Yeah.
Slowly you start to uncover some of these characters. Like the timelines just don't match up. The prosecution, a lot of things were omitted from the one-to-one interviews, where they were kind of leading the people who were going on the stand to tell a specific line of story. And basically, don't say that in court. Just dismiss that part. Let's focus on this story that Manson was hypnotic over these people, and he had such power, and that was just driven by the police, by the prosecution. And Manson, throughout like a 10-year span, would get in a lot of trouble. He was potentially in a rape case. He was in a stolen vehicle, all the while he was on probation, and he just kept getting let go.
Yeah,
and the authors,
I know about this. He never got like put in jail.
The author is like, why did he have such a loose leash? Like he just kept getting sent back out, and it all stems back to two years prior to the murders in 1967. Manson was involved in the Haight-Ashbury scene in San Francisco, which is like the summer of love, and there was a clinic there. I forget what it was called, but it was like the Haight-Ashbury psychedelic clinic, where people could come in if they were overdosing on LSD or meth or whatever it was, and they would get taken care of. And Manson was hanging out there all throughout that year, and the doctors really had a liking for him. Then he starts investigating the doctors there. Some of these doctors had ties to the CIA.
Okay, that's the word I was waiting for, or the acronym.
It takes the book like 350 pages to even mention CIA. Okay. So that's why I say it's so late.
Now, maybe I just won't interrupt you. Go on.
So, yeah, basically, the CIA...
I have so many questions about this
part.
The
puzzle, again, he doesn't outright say this was a CIA operation, but the puzzle that he leaves you with, the pieces he leaves you with, is kind of like my hunch after reading this book, because it leaves on kind of a cliffhanger. You're like, all right, he didn't actually solve anything. The hunch is basically that the CIA in the 50s and 60s was experimenting with a truth serum. They thought that LSD or other drugs or hypnosis could convince people to get the truth out of their head and implant a false truth into their head. So they were using this for prisoners of war. They were experimenting on prisoners in American prisons. And the theory is that they were experimenting with Charles Manson with this, and kind of he was like their subject, which is why he kept getting off of all of these petty crimes and probation. Just kept
it makes sense, because like he did convince people to do something horrific. Yeah, I mean, you got to understand from an intelligence standpoint, that's like, well, we have to get in on that. We can make people at our will just act out our wildest, and we would never get caught because we didn't really do anything. That's why Manson, to this day, he says, I've never killed anybody. I don't know I'm in here for murder, conspiracy to murder. I've never killed anybody. He literally said, if I was a murderer, there'd be none of you left. That's what he said. That's wild. Because he's like an evil, the way he said it, like that one line is enough to like, he's like a perfect villain, Charles Manson, in that there's part of you that like you really like him, actually. Like when you hear him talk in interviews, you're like, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. The guy's not wrong, is my point. A lot of the cultural opinions he has about issues with the government and all that stuff, it's like, he was
very involved in like clean stuff and green way before.
Really?
Yeah. So he was very much involved in like nature and like trying to get rid of emissions and stuff like that. They didn't really cover on that in the book. The wildest part of the book, I thought, that could probably be another book, was that the guy who was in that Haight-Ashbury clinic, the doctor who was kind of experimenting on people who had ties to the CIA, years earlier when JFK got assassinated.
See?
Right? So Lee Harvey Oswald, right? Apparently the lone gunman, Jack Ruby, shot him.
Yeah.
Right? And the whole theory on Jack Ruby was like, he was insane or maybe there was mob ties, but it was never really found out because he died in prison a few years later of cancer, I think. What they tie is the doctor in the Haight-Ashbury Clinic who was working with Manson. When Jack Ruby was in prison for killing Lee Harvey Oswald, that doctor went in to interview Jack Ruby and perform a psychiatric assessment.
Evaluation.
There's no record of that evaluation. There's no tape. There's no written documents. The only two people who have any record of it are the doctor and Jack Ruby. And apparently Jack Ruby, all throughout that time, was very cogent, talking relatively normally. The day after that doctor went in to evaluate him for a psychiatric assessment, Jack Ruby started acting crazy.
Interesting.
Like just saying outrageous stuff about how there's another Holocaust coming, and that's all he would talk about for the next 5 years. And
interesting.
That's what basically got them to think, oh, he was just insane,
Yeah. Well, what do you think happened? You think he gave him LSD?
I think he was a hypnotist. What's the word?
Hypnotist.
He was a hypnotist, and
that's
other people.
That's
claim,
what he did then.
It's very likely that that's what happened in there.
You ever see the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats? You ever see that movie with George Clooney and Kevin Spacey?
I don't think I've seen the full thing.
It's a very interesting movie, and it's kind of like a joke, but it's kind of also definitely true in a way, or it's definitely got some truth to it. Where the CIA and the military in general, they definitely at least have tried to get people to can just be able to control other people with their minds or through influence. And isn't that what you're doing with hypnosis? I mean, you're making someone act out things they would never do. I mean, yes, some people aren't susceptible to hypnosis. Some people are more susceptible, but whatever. But The Men Who Stare at Goats, it was during that time when there was this I guess the psychedelic revolution or whatever. It just got people, it was brand new. It's a new thing. They must have been thinking hey, is there something to this? How powerful is the mind?
Mm-hmm.
And The Men Who Stare at Goats is great. It's more telepathy and stuff like that. But it's great because there's a scene where George Clooney they call it The Men Who Stare at Goats because the task was to sit how you and I are sitting right now, except one of us is a goat. And I have to stare at you and try to kill you with my mind. And the thing is, in the movie, the goat, when George Clooney is looking at him, it just so happens to have a heart attack and die.
Oh. So
now everyone thinks that he can do this. So then he has to go in and he's on these crazy missions. He's also there's something to be said about intuition. They have a task where in a drawer like this one, there's a picture and no one knows what the picture is of. And they ask them, tell us what the photograph is of. What's on the photograph? And everyone's saying these ridiculous things. And then George Clooney, you can tell he's trying. He's he's sweating and he's staring. And he goes, it's a man sitting in a chair. And then they open it up and it's the Lincoln Memorial, which is a man sitting in a chair. But it's not really just that. It's the Lincoln. It's a picture. He would have, if you really knew, he would have said it's a picture of Abraham Lincoln, whatever. But intuition, there's always, he does have these weird, some people are like that, They can do weird shit like that. Remember Woodlock Pines?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, one time, I don't know if you were there, man, but there was a dude there who had...
Was it a hypnotist?
He was a hypnotist, but he was also telepathic. And he claimed he guessed this girl's high school locker combination. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And everybody was clapping and what? And I'm going, is this guy fucking real? He can, what do you mean? He was just remember he was he was very strange.
Yeah.
And he was blindfolded and he was doing all this insane shit. Yes, she could have been paid, but the girl was 11 years old. There's no way she was in on it. Could have been his daughter. I don't know. But it was very entertaining and it really got me thinking, can people actually, is there telepathy?
I don't know.
I mean, they say the aliens don't talk in movies because they communicate telepathically. Because, you get to a point in evolution, it suggests, where this is a waste of time. It takes energy, it's noisy, not everyone's got a good voice. But if you could just communicate, anyway. But that was the point of this. The story is that the CIA and Manson were not like he was in on it, but they were using him. They were using him.
It reminded me of that scene in Pineapple Express where it's Bill Hader behind the the glass mirror and like smoking weed for the first time, and the doctors
yes,
in the military
yes.
are like
exactly.
You know,
and it's like that's a flashback, right, from like way back in the Vietnam War.
But that's kind of what it was with LSD.
It was brand new at the time. They didn't know what it.
They didn't know what it was.
Were.
They didn't know how it made people feel, or if you made groups of people take it, if it would be able to like.
Well, people say they've tripped with people and they all share an experience, right? And like, it's inexplicable that we all saw this one thing. It wasn't real after all. Why were we all? Maybe we were sharing an interdimensional plane of consciousness for a moment. You know, it's possible. You don't know.
Yeah, it just made me convinced of the fact of how people can work off incentives in law enforcement, in the federal government, and all of those things to just do a massive cover-up, and the power behind that cover-up is just so massive. This guy reported for 20 straight years, and just everywhere he went was a dead end. Everywhere he'd go, he'd get like, people would just be like, I don't want to talk about it. You know what?
Doesn't this make you think too, like, people always say the moon landing can't be fake because how could everybody remain quiet who was involved? But it's like, this was semi big of a deal. Like, this was a huge story. Everybody knows about the Manson murders, and yet you're saying this guy, he would try to look into it and he would always hit a dead end.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many holes do you really have to fill up with like with a giant conspiracy? I mean, this is big enough where like major news attention, everyone knows. Like, the moon landing's just as similar, way bigger, yes, but it's a similar kind of huge story. And it's like, if everyone's incentivized to just not say anything or refuse to comment, you can make anything happen, bro. Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing. That's all I'm saying. Great documentary, Room 237. You gotta watch it, man. It's one of those things like this book. You watch it and you go, oh, like the moon landing was fake. Like, it presents all this circumstantial evidence that really does point to one solution, which is just like, why? Like, dude, I don't know. Isn't there a whole thing about like just the very obvious fact of how could the footage have survived through like there's no atmosphere and the radiation from the sun would have destroyed it, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the moon landing? Real quick, I don't want to talk about it for too long. Yes or no? Did we go to the moon?
I don't have a quick answer.
Yes or no?
I'm going to give you like the politician who's getting grilled. It's a yes or it's a simple yes or no question, sir. Please answer. Just yes or
that's
no.
what I'm doing to you.
Yeah, no. The only thing that makes me a disbeliever is, why have we not landed anyone on the moon since 1960?
Apparently, we're going back in 2 years.
Yeah.
But
that's the only thing where I'm like, all right.
Now CGI.
Were we that good in 1969, and are we that bad now?
Well,
like, what happened in between?
It's also the case that Stanley Kubrick also happened to, direct a Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is another praised for its special effects and the whole thing.
And there's also stories about like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin getting like so angry at people when they say the moon landing was fake. So that makes me almost think like, what's the big deal? If you landed on the moon, you should almost just brush that off. Like, oh, those people are ridiculous.
Exactly.
But the fact that they're reacting so violently and angrily, I don't know. That's just my weird one.
I don't know. I don't think we did.
It's made me.
I gotta say, I don't think we did.
The more I read these books and like you see these documentaries uncovering things, the more credit I give to conspiracy theories. I won't say I'm like a full blown like, oh, I believe every conspiracy theory that comes across my desk, but I am much more willing to give a little bit of credence to some conspiracy theories now, especially after like COVID, the JFK stuff. You read about the Manson stuff. You read about like so many, like the Gulf of Tonkin, and like just all of these conspiracy, like Killers of the Flower Moon, just like all these different things start adding up, and you're like, all right, there's enough cases in history where odd shit has happened. And I'm not saying that a group of people conspired to make them happen, but it's definitely not what's being presented to me. It's not the reality that's being presented to us might not be the case. And maybe I'll say it's 40% false, 60% true. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. There's smart reporters out there. There's people trying to uncover it literally 24/7 like Tom O'Neill. So you're going to get 60% of the truth, I think, in a good scenario. But as we talked about on the last episode, like the Huntington Fire Department thing, two stories and they got stuff wrong.
Yeah.
My uncle actually commented, my uncle Dick, who's a reporter, He was like, do you know, by the way, how many cops and firemen give us the wrong information? He's like, that's BS. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, and that's what's weird is there's no incentive there. It's just like people just make mistakes. Like, you know, speaking of chaos, I think we should talk about Israel and Palestine.
That is chaos for sure.
That is a lot of chaos, and it ain't good, brother.
Some wild shit's going on there.
I'm just going to be very honest about it. Like, I just can't believe, and I'm this is a little therapeutic right now. I don't really get to like spill my feelings about this like in public all the time, you know? But, you know, when it happened October 7th, 1,400 people got killed, innocent people. Everyone knows that now. But my issue was the reaction or lack of reaction thereof. I don't understand how the reaction to that was free Palestine. Like, I understand that part of the whole thing, but no Israeli flags, no Israel Facebook profile pictures, no outpouring of support and prayers from the celebrities and the famous and the politicians. And I'm like, 1,400 people just got murdered. It's in vain.
I mean, it's basically Israel's 9/11.
Exactly. That's what they say. And I mean, obviously it is because I think it's given a little bit less weight, as tragic and unfortunate as that is, because unfortunately stuff like this happens and terrorist attacks happen over there so often, or there's just always so much turmoil and bombs and rockets and killings happening that it's given a little bit less weight. But I personally think it's Israel's 9/11 in the fact that it happened very unexpectedly to a nation whose military is incredibly powerful. 1,400 people died in one country. Think about that.
That's the equivalent, if you do like the numbers compared to like, if that amount of percentage of the population died in the U.S., that's like 25,000 U.S. people dying in a terrorist attack. That, and I think it's also because not many people may realize this who are just reading the articles and the headlines, but like, this is a massive dynamic change for history. Yeah. Like that day, October 7th, and because of the global international affairs implications that ripple out of that, there could potentially be like World War III. And I know people overuse that term all the time, but there could potentially be nuclear powers. The U.S. is involved, oddly, on both sides of this, which is the weirdest part of the fucking situation. So it's so messy, and it's hard for me to have fully formed opinions on it because it's so much of a deeper history, and it is fucked up in so many different ways. And like, it's not, maybe there is a way that you can clearly identify the good guy and the bad guy in this situation, right? But I think the response on the left and some of these college campuses has just been like absurd, totally like absurd. Where is this coming from?
But again, it's like, this is my point. Like I was saying before, the response.
Yeah, like the day after a terrorist attack is not the time to talk about
free Palestine.
Why the other side, deserved to have done.
People are walking around going, "This was justified." Are you out of your fucking mind?
Because people are using the term like decolonize,
right?
The Gaza Strip and West Bank, and it's like, I don't know. It's
everything's got to become. You ever see that Family Guy meme where the cop is looking at Peter Griffin driving, and the darker the skin, the less okay it is for him to be doing this? It's like that's all they do on the left. And whoever's browner, they win. It's like, you're a fucking moron. There was a terrorist attack. How are they not? I mean, I just don't understand how that's okay or justifiable or even understandable. Like, I don't get it, man. And I really did look into both.
Yeah, it's amazing how people try to just intellectualize things like that.
Right.
Where they
try
go,
to belittle you.
I'm so smart that I will take the other side and actually almost like double bluff. I'm so smart that I'm going to be like, no, actually the people who got terrorized are the oppressed, or they're the ones oppressing, and the other side is justified in that because I've done so much research that I'm at a higher degree of knowledge than you, and you just don't even get it. You don't even understand.
And you know what's so funny?
The history is so deep. You don't get it. Read a book.
Right. There are people telling me that, oh, well, you only get your news from one source. You have to look into your own do your own research and look at multiple sources of information. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? COVID, you were the same fucking person who was telling me, listen to the news. They're the experts. Don't do your own research. Are you a doctor? You're a doctor now. What are you, a fucking historian? You're a political strategist? You're a military strategist? What? These are the same people who told you to just forget about your body autonomy. Get the goddamn jab, shut your fucking mouth, and get in line. These are the same people telling me to now do my own research on this conflict about, like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I've been telling you assholes that you can't just watch one news channel and think you know everything. I don't need to hear that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're the idiot now who's just like all of a sudden subscribing to this logical, and now you're talking down to me. And you were the one who was, like, you know what I mean? The hypocrisy is unbelievable here.
So I forget there's a term for it, but the fact that anyone can just post an opinion so quickly now on social media, and that includes journalists and CEOs and tech entrepreneurs, whoever they want, they can post an opinion from their toilet seat, and people are now valued off their opinions versus their actions. So people think, oh, I'm gonna tweet out some really cool, opinion that's gonna get a lot of likes and retweets and start a discussion, or maybe I'm even gonna troll people. And the fact of the matter is 85% of the tweets are done by 15% of the people on Twitter. So
that's always the case of things, but yeah.
So this guy Gerwinder I follow on Twitter, great Twitter follow. He has a Medium posts and stuff, but he calls this idiocy saturation. Online, people who don't think before they post are able to post more often than people who do. As a result, the average social media post is stupider than the average social media user. Worth remembering whenever Twitter dumbassery drives you to despair.
Yeah, it's a good point. But the thing is, it's not even just Twitter. Can I tell you something? This is actually a fun fact about me at this point. I don't have a Twitter. I've never had one. I don't read tweets. I've never read tweets. I don't.
Well, it applies to journalists,
right? Social media posts in general. Well. But I didn't go to one, but I went by a Palestinian rally by City Hall. I was getting coffee, and I was like, you know what? I hear a bullhorn. Let's go check it out. And, honestly, being honest, they were just praying for the innocent civilians who are being killed in Gaza. But there are people flying a Hamas flag and carrying it down the street. It's like, what's your point? What do you want exactly?
That's bizarre.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you want? Like, because here's the thing. I've talked to some Jews, and they are insistent that the goal is to eliminate the Jews.
I think that's a big thing that we in America don't quite grasp.
Understand
is because in America we're kind of losing our religion a little bit. We don't have
a little bit.
Yeah, big bit. But literally Hamas, their religious belief, they believe like their goal is to eliminate Jews from Israel.
Right.
Eliminate. Like that is
all of them.
That is a religious like moral that they hold and value.
You're right.
So it's not just like terrorists attacking the U.S. because they hate freedom. It's they want to eliminate the Jewish people off of that land.
There are people out here who are. It doesn't matter if you're Palestinian, whatever. What matters is, are you thinking right? Like, are you ideologically possessed? 1,400 people were just murdered. And no one gives a fuck, dude.
Yeah, and it's wild in the state where like companies and CEOs are, the pressure is on them to make a statement, right?
Yes.
Between George Floyd, between the Ukraine war, like all CEOs.
They were making Trader Joe's change like, the name of their food over bullshit. And this is nothing? No one cares? Now
that has set the standard, which like I have mixed feelings on, honestly. Like I work for a company and they come out with statements, right? And it's like, some companies, it's like, do we really care what your stance is? But I get it. Now it's kind of like an employee safety thing where employees want to make sure that the culture in their company is, hey, like
inclusive and safe.
But like this is something that we think is BS, and like we'll protect you guys from any like bigotry or whatever at that. And that's all good and fine, right? I think that's good. But now I think it's put pressure on companies and CEOs where it's like, hey, you said something about George Floyd. You said something about Ukraine. Where's your statement on this?
Exactly.
Like we're demanding it. And part of me does a little bit sympathize with the CEOs who get that pressure now, because now it's like, shit, anything that happens, whether it's Israel, whether it's something in the U.S., a shooting, whatever it is, now they have to say something. So it's a weird position, but I agree with you where it's like you gotta say something about this. You can't just ignore this one. And like,
right. And I
thought
that we
and
all
I know
agreed.
it's a complicated issue,
right.
but like,
it is a complicated issue, but that's the thing. It's been a complicated issue for 75 fucking years at this point in a mainstream sense, and no one gave a fuck. A terrorist attack happened. How come people can't just understand how appalling that should be? Like, I look, man, we are. You know how many innocent civilians we killed over the course of our stay in Iraq? Like, just guess how many innocent civilians,
not soldiers.
Not soldiers, civilians, not including soldiers. How many were their deaths caused by the American military over the course of 2001 to 2019?
20,000.
315,000, it's estimated.
Jesus.
So you're going to tell me that you didn't give a flying fuck when we were doing this for 20 years? 20 years. Barack Obama killed 3,000 people on a daily basis with drone strikes for 2 years straight. No one cares. It's just annoying to me that something like this happens, and now everyone's pretending that they care about Palestinians, and you don't. You're a liar. What you're doing is you're refusing to acknowledge a terrorist attack as a bad thing. It's unbelievable.
And the scary part about this situation is the fact that obviously the U.S. backs Israel in this, right? Like, we basically helped to form the state of Israel, but also Iran backs Hamas,
right?
Who performed the terrorist attacks. The U.S. signed a deal with Iran. The Biden administration just sent Iran $6 billion.
Right.
And they say, oh, it's only for humanitarian efforts and stuff like that. But like,
yeah, the Babylon Bee had a great quote. They were like, Joe Biden solidifies pinky promise that Hamas will not.
It's like
that Iran will not use.
All right, what is that word for the promise?
They said they won't. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, listen, man, it's just, I can't believe. I'm very disappointed in my fellow Americans. I got to tell you that right now, bro. I really am. It's really unbelievable. It's disgusting that people haven't. And then people who don't say anything either about Palestine are like, well, they'll straight up tell me, who cares? I'm like, are you fucking nuts? What's wrong with you? What do you mean, who cares?
No.
Look, man, I don't know, bro. I've always... I don't understand the anti-Semitism. I guess it is real. I never really saw it, you know? I don't get it. I don't know. And it's blatant. I mean, Kanye said it straight up on TV, right? And what? Adidas dropped him. Everyone still loves Kanye. He comes out with an album. Everyone's going to listen to it. Like, it's just crazy, right? I don't know.
Where do we go from here?
Well, chaos, man. I mean, your tattoo.
I did, yeah. I just got a new tattoo.
It's very, you know what? Show everybody.
Yeah, so I just got this about half sleeve 2 days ago. So
wow,
it is a ship.
Look at that.
It's a wooden ship called Endurance in, stormy seas, stormy skies. It's on fire. It's cool, man. I mean,
it looks so fucking good, man. It really does.
I've been working on it for a while, and
so
all of my tattoos, the goal of them is to be essentially visual metaphors for quotes that I know, right?
Okay.
So this feather one, it's a Benjamin Franklin quote, which is "Do things worth writing, or write things worth reading." And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So then this one,
I thought it was very like Robert Plant of you to get that.
No.
You know?
Yeah. Some people are like, "Oh, are you a big Foo Fighters fan?" Because like Dave Grohl has something.
Yes, he has that Zeppelin tattoo.
This is a like a quill pen that Benjamin Franklin would have wrote with. This one,
I love that quote.
It's a ship. It's actually a bunch of quotes together. So one, it's just like the image of endurance, the Shackleton thing. The other quote is, smooth seas never made a good sailor. The other is, you're the captain of your own ship.
Yeah.
The other is, no wind is favorable if you don't know where you're sailing.
Mm-hmm. Where is the rum gone?
Yeah,
Jack Sparrow.
Burn the boats, which is the other one. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah. Is that Goggins?
No, that's who's going to carry the boats.
Yeah, but the burn the boats is isn't that like a Roman, like, now we can't leave the island until we're done kind of thing?
It's basically like go into war with total confidence.
Yeah.
If you came in on a boat, burn them because we're not leaving unless we win.
Right.
So it's a metaphor of all of those things combined. So when I look at it, I think of whichever quote is resonating at the
My
time.
question is, and this is maybe interesting for people who don't have tattoos or are thinking about them, because I don't have one and I've wanted one for so long, to the point where I've walked into tattoo parlors and, you know, these guys are covered head to toe in tattoos. So it's a big deal to you, and they couldn't care less.
No, they don't care.
They're like, look, man, it's not a big deal, really. Like, your first tattoo, I understand you're excited, but here's your booklet. Just pick this or tell me what you want. And so the guy who I was talking to, I wanted something like whatever, and he was like, I was like, how are we going to work on the art together? He's like, you can just tell me, man. Just tell me what you want. And I'm an artist. Here's my work. If you like my style, I'll come up with it on the fly. Now, when you went there, did you just tell the guy, like, how did you design that? Or did he send you a sketch? Or
Yeah, so first off, my rule was when I was 25, I wanted tattoos. So I have in the back of my notebook, I do sketches or like write ideas of tattoos, like in theory. And my rule was at 25, if I still want this when I'm 30, I'll get it. So I turned 30, I still wanted tattoos. So I'm like, all right, I'm doing it this year. I'm going to get at least one, which I got this one in February.
Are you addicted now, would you say?
I think once you get the first one, you realize that it's not scary. And then the fear of it is completely gone.
Right, it's over.
And now that you have one, like your body is not like pure anymore. And you're like, oh, I can get as many as one. But the way I did the design was basically just, honestly, I used Pinterest.
Who doesn't? I have a whole Pinterest.
So Pinterest, I just,
tattoos.
I just created like a board of like different ideas. So I knew the quotes I wanted. I tried using, what I tried using was like AI image generators.
Yeah.
Because some tattoos, like I like a song lyric, and I'm like, how do I make that a visual thing? So I would use these.
That's actually a good idea.
I used Midjourney, which is like an AI thing that you can do for free, and then it's like $10 a month. So I'd type in some stuff that I wanted and like create a black and white tattoo of this Jimi Hendrix lyric, or create a black and white tattoo of like this, quote from Benjamin Franklin, and nothing really came up good. So yeah, I just did a bunch of like, I wanted like a sailboat tattoo. I wanted a stormy sea tattoo. And like eventually you pick the ones that kind of resonate with how you feel, and you filter out all the shitty ones. And then I created just like a board literally of like different ideas. I went into the tattoo shop. I showed the guy. I was like, here's what I'm thinking. I also, you have to follow different tattoo artists because there's different styles. Some are more cartoony. Some are more like dark, thick lines. So I've been following this guy for a while. I saved some of his Instagram posts. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool one. Or like, he's maybe never done a boat before, but it looks like that's the style I kind of like it in.
This is what the boat would look like.
So I went to him with that confidence, showed him it last Friday, and then made an appointment for the next Friday. And that whole week, I didn't see any of his work. He told me he was going to send me them. So I walked into the shop 2 days ago, and he showed me the sketch. And I was like, that is sick.
Exactly.
And then I made some tweaks.
Is this the same guy who did the feather?
No, same tattoo shop, different artist. Yeah, the one who did the feather, she's done feathers before, so I knew, I'm like, basically, give me something similar to what you did last week.
That's great, and that was one day. That was one sesh.
This one, the feather, was like 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean the other, that's
the half sleeve. That was about 2.5, 3 hours, and it hurt.
Not that bad.
No, it's
3
not bad.
hours.
No, it definitely.
And that's a whole fucking goddamn half of your arm almost.
Yeah, I mean the tattoo, like getting the tattoo, didn't hurt that bad. It's like it's annoying. I'd say the pain.
Yeah,
it's kind of like. You know when you have like Sharpie or like a fake tattoo on and you got to scratch it off in the shower?
Yeah.
It's like that for 3 hours.
Well,
So the skin is just raw after. So like.
I saw a close-up, like super close-up of what actually is going on. And, dude, you're getting stabbed.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 million times.
And the part that sucked was he had to like shade in. So at that point, he's literally like going back and forth digging.
Yeah.
So that hurt. I'm like just wincing. Like,
yeah, I got to get one, man. And that's really inspiring because I want a sleeve if I get one. I don't want like a tattoo. I want like half my arms.
Yeah, my original idea was like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of little ones and then it'll add up.
Yeah.
But
You're
I was
not
like,
in the Navy.
I was like, you know what? I was like, I just get me a big one and then, Because after you get you know what I say? It's kind of like tattoos are kind of like smoking weed. You either go your whole life without ever doing it,
right?
And you're just like, I don't really like it, or you try it once, like it's not for me. Maybe you do it a few times, or you smoke once and now you're a pothead.
Right.
I think that's kind of how tattoos are, and I'm not saying I'm a pothead for tattoos, but I think I'm like I definitely want more.
I think you're gonna be covered in them, bro.
No. My image is I only want it on this one arm. That's it.
Yeah, I don't like the double sleeve.
No.
I like a sleeve.
I like one sleeve.
Yeah.
Is good.
But you know what sucks now? If I get one, I'm just like copying you now.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Every tattoo's unique, and the cool thing is the tattoo community, as it is, like when you start to meet other people who have tattoos, like it encourages you too, because like you realize like there's tough guys who have tattoos who will be so cool to you, and then
my
there's
wife has tattoos.
Yeah,
and
then
there's
like
freaking like fairy girl.
Yeah, and then there's
loves
girls who
Yeah.
have tattoos, and they'll talk to you the same way. So it's like a cool.
Yeah,
definitely you notice more artistic people get them in general. It's a certain type of mindset, a certain type of person who gets them.
Yeah, creative people usually, stuff like that. Artists, yeah.
But yeah, I have a bunch of other ideas that I'm excited about too, but I don't want to rush into them too quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's good that we have the books because, that is a big chunk of our lives and like what we believe and we it's very like it's a theme that it's very easy to, and it's worth putting on you. Like you believe in these quotes and like you live by them, and I
got to credit Lauren too, because she was always the one who was like kind of played goalie when I was trying to get too many tattoos. I was like, now that I got the first one, I'm like, I want to go book an appointment and do this. And she's like, hold on, do you really want this, or do you just think it's cool? So she was good at just like keeping my head level of like, you know what, let me wait until I really want it. So like I'll wait a few months, and if I still feel the way I do now, then I'll get it.
It's so crazy because like I'm reading a book now, and there's so many like quotes, like quotes that you could totally tattoo on yourself. Like they're just this. It's Dostoevsky, so it's like some of the things this guy says. I mean, it's unreal. Like and they're so inspirational in your mind. Like I could imagine telling an artist what like you did with the endurance tattoo, and I love that it encompasses many different things, but it's all kind of themed around the endurance. Like that's a really cool tattoo, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. This book I'm reading, I just want to tell you about it. It's another Dostoevsky novel. It's called The Idiot. Yeah. It's really cool, man. It was given me as a birthday gift. The Idiot is a really interesting deeply psychological, philosophical book. Of course it is. All of his are.
He was Crime and Punishment too?
Yeah. So this came out after Crime and Punishment in 1869. It was published. He's always trying to he has like these weird moral what ifs that he would do a lot. Like in Crime and Punishment, it's a lot of circumstantial, like what would you do in this situation? Like how would somebody feel in this situation? The Idiot is about a person who basically represents Jesus Christ and what it would be like realistically if that kind of a person existed today in 1869, whatever. Because Russia was going through, this period of like an enlightenment and science and rationalism and objectivity and materialism. God was leaving the culture. And like Dostoevsky was like, what would happen if a Jesus-like, Christ-like figure came today? Would he be influenced by all of this? Would he be, turned against his principles and his morals because of how attractive all of these things are these days? And it's really, again, like how interesting is that as a topic, as a premise, right? So it follows this kid. I'm not going to get, there's so many names in Dostoevsky novels, but the guy is so, like literally
Russian names.
There's
too.
like 60 people. Yeah. But this guy is, the main moral compass is Prince Mishkin. And Prince Mishkin is a Russian who's coming back to Russia after being gone for a few years to claim an inheritance. But the thing is, he's so genuinely kind and humble, and he speaks to people with good intentions, and you can tell he's not trying to get anything out of you or to make you do anything for him, which at the time was very strange. A lot of people in Russia were very weary of strangers. They didn't trust people very much because everybody was trying to climb this new societal hierarchy of like materialism and who do you know, how much money do you have. God was like gone, kind of like here. And So people are kind of thrown off by this, and he comes off as kind of an idiot. Like, are you naive? You know, he'd rather spend time with children a lot of the time because they're so pure and innocent, and they're not trying to get anything from anybody. They're just enjoying life. And anyway, it kind of goes down this love story rabbit hole as well. But it's interesting that there's a line, will beauty save the world? And it's interesting because that's a good question. Like, what does that even mean, beauty? Like, it's supposed to be this kind of like, it's supposed to be like an opinion. Like, what is beautiful to you? Like, if you and I both saw a woman, we wouldn't necessarily, maybe you would think she's absolutely gorgeous, and I would go, yeah, she's pretty. But that does imply that there's something kind of, beauty has, it can't just be everything. And that's the problem with a godless culture like today. There's just like fat models. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous, dude. There's like obese models and people with skin conditions doing like, you know, skin modeling. It's like, is this a joke? Like, it's purposely taking things that aren't beautiful. And I say that in quotes for a reason, because we know from like things like the golden ratio and stuff like that, like there's symmetry has a lot to do with it. But things are opinionated, but there is they say beauty is a perfect balance between chaos and order. That's in that area is where beauty lies. That we both agree upon.
There's like an objective quality
that exactly.
That everyone can agree that is exceptional.
Right. Like for people who are like,
it's like if a guy says the Hemsworth brothers aren't attractive. I'm like,
what are you talking about? What? Yes, they are.
Yeah, that like objectively they are gorgeous.
Right.
They're beautiful.
Right. And so he falls in love with these two women and whatever, and one of them is supposed to represent chaos, and the other one's supposed to represent order. And since he's Christ-like, he's trying to be with both of them because he doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You know what I mean? And like what ends up happening in the end of the book, I'm so dumbing this down to like a ridiculous like.
Is it a long book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, one of those. And he basically ends up with neither of them. They both abandon him, and he ends up going insane. And the moral of the story is, if you're trying to be a Christ-like figure in a material, godless culture and world, you're going to end up going crazy because it's not a place for that anymore. Now, beauty is nothing. It's whatever people say it is. There is no like core common belief between people anymore. And it's a really interesting, deep philosophical novel. Like there's a whole paragraph about whether or not, like, is it just if someone kills someone to sentence them to death? And he goes into in very seriously awesome, like brilliantly worded detail, what the torment would be like knowing you're going to die next year. You're sentenced to death. Because then it's 10 months, I'm going to die. And then it's 10 weeks, and then 10 days, and then 10 hours, and 10 minutes. And he basically walks you to the gallows. And like you start to wonder, like, is that more torturous than just killing him on the like the torment, the stress? It's like, is that even an, as horrible as that is there a crime that would even require that as the punishment? So like, it's a deeply philosophical book in that way. That's just one paragraph, you know?
That's interesting.
It is.
Is that really like, I don't remember the plot exactly, but is that like that movie Dogma with,
I never saw it.
Oh, it's the movie with, it's Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. And it's kind of like George Carlin is God.
Yes. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I never saw it. I mean,
it's a comedy, but
yeah.
It's kind of that idea of like if God came down. Alanis Morissette is like Jesus, basically.
So it's weird how 1860s Russia or whatever is very similar to like our culture right now, where there's all this confusion. You know, like there's a lot of people like don't know what to believe because they don't want to say the wrong thing and offend everybody. Like and like the thing about confusion is when it manifests as an uncertainty with regards to your direction, you know, the consequence of that is anxiety.
Yeah.
Like that's basic psychiatry.
It's the tattoo. It's what is it? No wind is favorable if you don't know where you're sailing.
Exactly. The consequence. It's also just multiple negative, like, you know, frustration, anger management issues. I saw an interesting video today where a guy was giving a pro-life kind of speech, you know, demonstration, whatever, on a college campus. And this woman came up to him, and she was a professor there, and she grabbed the mic, and she said, you know, I got an abortion 2 years ago, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. They ripped the fetus right out of my uterus, and it was awesome, and I don't regret a second of it. And she's being, kind of cute about it. And the guy takes he says to her, you know what? I pray for you and God bless you. Please have a wonderful day. And she, having the mic still, she like won't give it back to him. And she's looking at him with this like look of like, and she goes, you're really a fucking asshole. You know that? And he's like, sister, please, I'm not trying to offend you. Please, I'll pray for you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And he's trying to take the mic back and he rips the cable out because she won't let go of it. Now it's turned into this thing where she's like not giving him his microphone back. And people are like, hey, give it to him. And he won't, right? And I mean, she won't. And it turns into the situation where the cops get involved and she ends up getting arrested, right? Because she won't give him this microphone back. And it's like, oh, I thought that was the best thing that ever happened to you. And you couldn't be happier now because of your abortion. You talked about it for 3 seconds and now you're getting arrested. Because these people are lying to themselves a lot, dude. Like they're confused because they don't have any moral compass. And I'm not pro-life, whatever. You want to get aborted? I don't give a shit. But like personally, I think I'm a pro-life person, personally. Always have been, really. But like, yes, there's this disconnect between real beauty, real balance between chaos and order in people's lives now. And they're just kind of like saying what they think they should say and not what they actually believe. And it's interesting how Dostoevsky, guys like him, Nietzsche, with their novels, they kind of predicted this behavior in a way.
Yeah, it is interesting because you think of like the fact that religion is gone, and there's plenty of things you could say about religion being, there's plenty of bad things you could say about religion, right? But the biggest like value that it brings is just the fact that it's a kind of a mutually agreed upon moral code that everyone in that community believes upon, right? So even if you fucking hate your next door neighbor, you see him in church on Sunday, and you guys have that shared mutual agreement that, hey, this is, sacred time. We'll be friendly neighbors and we'll do what we got to do. We'll pray for each other, whatever it is. And then you go back to being neighbors and maybe you hate each other. But there's that mutual agreement. And if you live in a community like that, it's beautiful, right?
Right.
You probably still hate people. You got people that annoy the shit out of you, but you have that mutually agreed upon belief system that you can trust them if something goes wrong, right? If your house burns down, you might hate your neighbor, but he's like, oh, that guy sits next to me at church, and I know he's a good guy. I'm going to pray for him, send him money, do whatever I can to help, right?
Like the guy who was holding this demonstration, she just tried to upset him. And what did he say back to her? I'm sure in his heart that hurt, but he said, I'm going to pray for you. Yeah. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Like, and getting back to confusion leading to anxiety, I'm pretty sure the last time I checked, literally the whole country has anxiety issues.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think that is? Well, it's because of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. That ties into 2 books I just read. The one is The Road to Character, which is by David Brooks, and it talks about resume virtues versus eulogy virtues, and how today in society, a lot of us live our lives based on resume virtues, which are things that look good on paper. Getting the right job, buying the house, promoting the right things on social media, saying the right things, saying the right opinions, posting the right pictures of you on vacation, doing all the things that your family and friends will all be like, oh, they're doing great, right? But inside, you're anxious, you're stressed, you don't have a real compass, you don't know where you're going in life. You're kind of just following this path. Whereas eulogy virtues are the things that people will say about you at your funeral.
Dude, what book is this?
It's called The Road to Character.
Oh, man.
It's a great book.
I think I should.
David Brooks, fantastic writer. He's a New York Times op-ed. He has a few other good books. But eulogy virtues, which is basically what are the values that people will talk about when you pass? What are the things that they will say you did to other people, how you made them feel, how you treated other people, right? So he talks about all these characters in history. He goes through, different people and all of them had religion in some way. So he talks about the value of religion. The other, and sorry to cut you off.
No, I'm cutting you off.
Just to mention.
I don't want to forget what I'm going to say.
Yeah, the other book is called The Paradox of Choice. So this book is by Barry Schwartz, and it is about how we now have an abundance of choices with everything, right?
37 flavors.
Yeah, you have 15
but it's all coffee.
And, yeah.
You know?
But it's the same thing with a lot of, you could call it political ideologies, with religious beliefs. You have this overabundance of choice that it almost actually gives you almost paralysis analysis. Yeah. We have so many things that you almost would rather have 3 TV channels versus Netflix, Hulu, Disney, HBO, Amazon, all these freaking things. It's overwhelming. And it's actually causing us to be more anxious, less sure of ourselves, and, making us less happy versus, and you think freedom of choice
I agree with that,
equals happiness, but it doesn't.
Well, people talk about the good old days. I think that's what they are really saying in a nutshell. We only had 12 channels, and it's like, yeah, I bet you were, I don't know. There's a nostalgia for that, and I wonder why. Vinyl's making a comeback. There's this begging for a simpler time. What I was going to say before about the other book, it's interesting you said the eulogy, kind of what will people remember about you after you die. I didn't know this about Dostoevsky until I started reading this book. I was, just researching his life in general. He was sentenced to death at one point in his life for his writings, and I think 10 years, 1959 or so, he was sentenced to be put to death by a firing squad. And it was the day of that happening, and he was standing and waiting for these people and to shoot him. And somehow he was acquitted right before they were about to pull the trigger, and he was sentenced to work camp in a Siberia or something like that, whatever those Russian punishments were. But he was saved by the bell, whatever. And they say, before you die, your life flashes before your eyes. And he talked about how the only things that he remembers as an emotion and as of importance in that moment before he thought he was going to die was love and faith. That's the important shit. That's the stuff. Love, faith, were you a good person? That stuff matters. It doesn't matter what you draw. I mean, this is a cliche at this point, but there's a real problem with that in this whole culture today. It's a really big issue.
Well, yeah. The quote I love is cliches are cliches for a reason.
Right.
You should pay attention to them.
Right. And you were saying also about the other end of that, it's the eulogy and the resume.
Resume virtues, yeah.
The resume virtues, Chuck Palahniuk was just on Soft White Underbelly, and Mark asked Chuck, tell me about Fight Club. Why did you write Fight Club? And he starts to tell, basically, he has a really funny way of telling stories, but he's like, basically, all of my friends at that time were 30, 31 years old, and we all did the thing. We went to college, we got jobs, we had girlfriends or boyfriends, and we were doing the thing that everyone told us to do to be happy and live a good life. And none of us were happy. In fact, we were all miserable. And I came to realize that our generation doesn't have a struggle. We don't have a Great Depression. We don't have a great war. We don't have a great, what's the line from the book? Our struggle is an internal one or something like that. And I forget what it was. It's a great line, but it's to the point that if you don't have real problems or rough seas, you're not going to feel like you have any real reason to live. And that's the emptiness of the culture now. It's almost too easy. There's too many flavors of ice cream. I know I'm never going to need a ride. I have Uber. I'll never get stranded. I'll never get lost. I'll never, and I'm not saying things should be worse, but I don't think we're going down the right path.
Yeah, there's a book, I haven't read it yet, but there's a book literally about this called The Comfort Crisis.
Yeah.
Which is about how easy it is now to literally just be comfortable 24/7. And I have another quote that I'm writing in this that I want to pull up because it's literally, it's so relevant. And the quote is, unknown suffering is going to happen. So the only way to prepare yourself for unchosen suffering is through chosen suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, working out and stuff like that.
And Ryan Holiday writes this in the Daily Stoic. He says, we'd be crazy to want to face difficulty in life, but we'd be equally crazy to pretend that it isn't going to happen, which is why when it knocks on our door, as it very well may this morning, let's make sure we're prepared to answer.
It's a great way to put it.
And the quote I love, one of my favorite quotes is, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war.
Oh.
Right? Wow. That.
Love that.
And Jordan Peterson, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Get a gardener in a war.
So you have to You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations because life is a series of uncomfortable situations, and suffering is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's inevitable that things aren't going to go the way that you planned. And if you're comfortable 24/7, if you're in your sweatpants and slippers watching Netflix and eating ice cream, when shit hits the fan and you instantly, start playing the victim and poor me, what am I going to do? All this shitty stuff is happening to me. Then you're basically living life on your heels passively. And that's not going to get you anywhere. You have to go out and do. You have to go out and struggle through life, experience it.
That's the thing. And like people, I was thinking about this with the book. The book, it talks a lot about principles and things like that and moral codes and stuff, living a certain way. And I feel like people now are just kind of afraid to actually pursue anything that's worth anything, actually, because they know that if they lose it, it'll be the end of like all things. Like people claim to not believe in anything. You hear that expression, there's no atheists in a foxhole, right? Like that kind of thing. It's like, okay, yeah, you don't believe in anything. You don't believe in nihilists, right? Like, oh, the system's a joke. It should all just be, torn down and start over. It's like, I'm pretty sure you don't believe that. Not really, anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like you're talking you're confused, and confusion breeds anxiety, and that's why people who claim to be like, godless, you would think someone who apparently knows everything about the universe would have no anxiety.
Yeah.
Oh, I know everything. I know. No, you don't know. Actually, you know less than anyone's ever known, because at least people back then knew that there's a way to live where it's best for yourself and your community and your family. And what are you doing, really?
It's like whenever
shouting into a megaphone.
Yeah, it's like whenever you have someone in your life who maybe has like an illness, or someone gets in an accident and is very sick, right? All of a sudden you start hearing people say, "We're praying for you," or "I'm praying for you," and you're like, "That person's not religious. That person's never taught." And
I'm not saying you got to be a priest, but like it's just don't hide behind this. There's this snobby like pretentiousness that comes with it now, where people are like, "You really believe in that nonsense or something," and they think they know everything. It's like, I'm pretty sure you just don't know anything at all. And you've never actually had to deal with anything hard. And, sometimes, I'm not saying that this is the only way to be, but like a lot of times hardship can turn people against this whole idea of religion.
Right.
I get that.
It can go both ways. For sure.
But I think that only adds more turmoil to the issue. I think that adds you're holding your fist at the sky inevitably. Like you're never going to get any answers that way. But,
right, there's the Winston Churchill quote. He says, "I'm an optimist. It doesn't seem to be any benefit to be anything else."
Right. Exactly. It's a great way to put it.
And it's the same thing with like faith, where it's like,
right.
It's like, I believe in something because like it's a hell of a lot better than not believing in anything.
Right, and people always say they don't, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Not really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, episode number 13.
Yeah.
This month was a Friday the 13th. We got both of our birthdays. We got Halloween coming up.
Yeah. Halloween's coming.
Month.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So, I get. Oh, I'm going to Disney World. I'm running the half. Next time you guys see me, I'll have run a half marathon.
Come with the medal around your neck.
Yeah, I will, dude. I'll come in I have a hat ready. I
got
all my birthday gifts were running gifts. So I'm ready, dude. I'm ready.
Good luck.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.